In 1992, a round pink cream puff set out on a journey to take back all the food that was stolen by the gluttonous King DeDeDe and return it to the inhabitants of Dreamland. Inhaling his enemies like a vacuum and spitting them back out again was his signature ability, but later on he developed the ability to copy the abilities of enemies he sucked into his giant face hole. In the ensuing 25 years, Kirby's become one of Nintendo's major franchise characters, appearing in nearly 24 of his own games, plus becoming a popular character in the Super Smash Bros. Franchise. We reminisce the Kirby franchise on this episode, so listen in as we head to Green Greens for Kirby's 25th anniversary, next on Downloadable Content. Hello everyone, welcome to Downloadable Content. I am Brian, and with me we have Nick.
Hi!
And only Nick. It's Nick and Nick alone day. I killed Ron at the end of the last episode. We had that Mortal Kombat duel, so he's dead. He may come back in future episodes. He probably will, just out of spite, because spite is the greatest force in the universe. So
I thought it was one-ups.
I'm sure he has them in great abundance, and I'm sure he will pay me back in kind for throwing him off a cliff or something. But yes, we're going to talk about Kirby, and he 25 years old, the pink ball is, and before we dive into that discussion, just want to remind everyone that every single episode of Downloadable Content can be found on our website at dlcpodcast.com. On top of that, all episodes are on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, and Google Play Music. So, for your listening pleasure, 6+ years of downloadable content, all there for you. Because we love you so much. Because you're worth it.
Duh.
But yes, Kirby, 25 years old, makes me feel a little old.
Yeah, I feel a little dated because I specifically begged my parents for a Super Game Boy so I could play Kirby's Dream Land 2 for on the Super Nintendo because I didn't have a Game Boy. And then as soon as I started to have access to the Kirby series, I just started collecting all the games for it and just having such a blast with it. Because I don't know how you feel about it, but for me, Kirby series has always been incredibly simplistic, but that's what made it fun.
And the fact that, this was kind of something that we hadn't really seen in gaming to this point. I mean, Nintendo has always been one for very imaginative characters to begin with, and by 1992, we'd seen Mario, we had seen Sonic, so we had a feel of how those platformers played out, jumping on enemies, advancing from level to level. But, Mario had his abilities, the Fire Flower, the Mushroom, and so on. Sonic with the different power-ups you could get in level, whether it was the Hot Foot or the temporary invisibility or the bubble.
The barrier, yeah.
Things like that. But this was a bit of an interesting concept, and Kirby was created by a developer called HAL Laboratory. And the idea of an enemy, a character sucking in their enemies and then spitting them back out again because you couldn't jump on them. Kirby would take damage.
Right.
This was something unique and fun and interesting, and I was exposed to Kirby with Kirby's Dream Land. Not in 1992, though. A few years later, when my stepbrother, we both had Game Boys, and he had this cartridge, and he showed it to me, and I became very interested, and played it, and loved it so much, and beat it so much, that I can now beat it's short. Kirby's Dream Land is short. It's
probably what? I could probably blast through in about 30-40 minutes.
Yeah. It's a short game, but still absolutely so much fun.
Well, and back in the day, that was a very tight controlling platforming game, but it was also, as we were quite young at the time, this, I felt to me, was still a fairly challenging game. I mean, I look back at it nowadays and go, oh, geez, this is easy. But kind of recalling back to the first time that I played it, I remember constantly running out of lives and constantly having to start over because I didn't quite have that coordination yet to being able to jump and dodge and, memorize enemy patterns. So, for its time, it had a fair challenge to it. But being in a Game Boy game, it was still kept fairly short. And the fact that it had basically a New Game Plus or a harder mode, did help out with some of the to kind of make your own challenge.
Oh yeah, and definitely agreed. When I played this game, at age 9, so this came out in 92, we were 7. That final boss battle with King DeDeDe is a bitch at age 7.
And was even worse in extra game because he just moved at lightning speed. There was no hitch to his moves. It was constant stringing of moves from one to the other, and it really tested your reflexes.
I remember distinctly playing that game for the first time and finally making it through the first 4 levels, and then you get to King DeDeDe, and the shock and of the feeling of betrayal when you realize you have to fight all 4 bosses again before you can take on King DeDeDe. That was I wasn't cursing at that point in my life, but
but it's just like, oh man, I gotta go through this
again?
Especially Kabula. That was the bane of my existence.
Yes. Oh man, because going through each level, Green Greens, that a fetus could beat that level. That's a really easy level. And looking at this first boss in Green Greens, I'm like, oh, a tree, all right.
Actually, since we're kind of talking about it a little bit, as far as the bosses go, one of them was Lololo and Lalala, which also had their own games, which was The Adventures of Lolo, but I don't remember when that came out.
Well, while you're looking that up, it was that particular boss that was my hardest.
Oh, you had trouble with Adventures of Lolo? By the way, that was 1989, so this is one of the few games that actually took characters from a different franchise. In fact, all 3 Lolo games were 1989 and 1990, so, pretty... I don't recall at that time having characters from an entirely different franchise appear in a different game, and as bosses, no less.
That's interesting that you bring that up, because that's, again, we weren't really doing a whole lot of cross mixing here of different games, at least not this early.
No, I mean, yeah, they were all developed by HAL.
Yep.
and Lolo was more, a puzzle game. So the fact that they appeared as bosses, and not like, and this is just kind of me personally speaking, I don't know if other people would feel differently, but I never made that correlation till years later. I had never heard of the Lolo series.
Yeah, neither had I. At least not by then.
No. It wasn't until years later, until I was like, oh. I think it was, till a few years later when Kirby's Avalanche came out that I was able to make that correlation. So this was 95, 96 for me, maybe 97.
But also interesting of note is the fact that this is the first entry for Kirby, and it's on a handheld.
That was... I don't remember the whole story behind that, but Kirby's, obviously, executive producer was Masahiro Sakurai, which we all know today as the guy who makes the Smash Brothers games.
Yep.
So... I don't really know where I was going with that, but it was interesting that they made it for the Game Boy, that his debut, as you said, happened on that Game Boy. And that I remember there was a big argument between Sakurai and Miyamoto about what Kirby's color would be. And Miyamoto wanted Kirby to be yellow.
Yep.
But Sakurai wanted him to be pink.
Which doesn't matter on a Game Boy anyway.
Which is why in Kirby's Dream Land he was white on the cover. Because it was a nice neutral color. Eventually, Miyamoto ended up working on something else, and Sakurai was pretty much given the reins, I think, in Kirby's Adventure, and then, which was a year later for the NES, and finally he was able to make him his signature pink, although yellow is the first palette swap for Kirby if you go to some other Kirby games.
Right, and, in fact, actually, as I take a look at the entire Kirby lineup, and I'm including the main series, the spin-offs, and all of that, I'm looking at this lineup, and I'm seeing that most of Kirby's games are on the handhelds.
And not just that Kirby's games were on the handhelds, but very early on, and I mean, we're talking a year later when Kirby appeared in Kirby's Pinball Land, that Sakurai and Nintendo was not afraid to do something different with this franchise, to basically any weird outside-the-box concept that Nintendo had, they placed Kirby front and center of it, and it made it worked, because it was such a, Kirby was such an outside-the-box character to begin with anyway, that it kind of fit for a lot of these weird game concepts that Sakurai and Nintendo had.
Right, and also, with input from Satoru Iwata as well, who,
yes,
was working at HAL initially.
You're very correct.
So he had a hand in some of the design of Kirby, and Kirby is very like Mario in that he's a very versatile character.
Yes, but really his versatility didn't really show up until Kirby's Adventure, when he had the ability to copy, the powers of his enemies. Now, I don't know about you, but I didn't play this particular title of Kirby until the remake years later for Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland.
I'm in a similar boat. I did not know I didn't even know Kirby's Adventure existed until it showed up on the Virtual Console for the Wii, because 5 years ago, for the 20th anniversary, Nintendo did this. They kind of made it the year of Kirby,
Right.
So
the Dream Collection.
they had the Dream Collection, and they did put out Kirby's Adventure on the Virtual Console for the Wii, and I went, oh.
See, I knew about Kirby's Adventure way back when it was first came out, because I was begging my parents for an NES to go with my SNES, and that had no chance of happening. I didn't realize at the time that the NES was kind of going away. I was 8 years old. How was I supposed to know?
Yeah, yeah.
But it always looked like it was such a interesting game to me of being able to copy powers, and it was really just a side-scrolling beat-em-up, and we kind of fit the vein of maybe some of the games like Double Dragon and Final Fight, but really dumbed it down and really was approachable for kids.
Basically, yes. And, Kirby's Adventure, which, again, follows the similar sort of gameplay as Kirby's Dream Land. I mean, Kirby's Adventure came out a year later, 1993. But when I played this on the Wii, I was like, holy shit, color. Like, and this was back in 2012. Now imagine what you've been like if you had started with Kirby's Dream Land on the Game Boy, first game, debut game from Kirby, and then you managed to pick this up on the NES a year later, and whoa!
I always appreciated for this game because this was the first to really include like a lot of hidden secrets within the game. Yeah, Kirby's Dream Land did have one or two secrets, but this game was riddled with them. Secret switches, which unlocked bonus mini games to earn extra lives, extra power-ups. I'd never really seen anything like that. It really felt like the same vein as Super Mario 3 in that aspect of being able to just go, hey, what's here? Oh, geez, look, in an area. And maybe some of those areas contained what you needed to, help get you to the 100% completion. Now, 1993, I think this was post Mario 3. In fact, I'm fairly certain of it. I think it was post Super Mario World. Had to be.
Well, let's see. Super Mario 3 came out...
Because I already had Super Mario World by this point, because for my 7th birthday is when I got it. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This was...
Mario 3 came out in 1990, so this is 3 years after that.
It honestly shouldn't surprise me, because this looked quite advanced for the for the NES, for what it was capable of doing. And also, holy shit, that, games for the NES was made for, like, almost 10 years.
And, this was a pretty solid game. Now, I know that this was able to expand on a lot of that. And this game ended up actually getting a remake, I think, for the Game Boy Advance.
That's when I first played it, Kirby's Nightmare in Dreamland.
Yep.
Which is 2002 for the Game Boy Advance. I played it when we were in college. That's when I got my hands on it because, thank you, the power of ROMs and emulators.
Disclaimer, downloadable content's not condone any sort of emulating bullshit. Okay.
But that's when I first got my hands on it, and then obviously it was ported to virtual consoles, whatnot. So it was just a lot sharper graphics, I guess would be the better way to put about it, and kind of have more of the tighter controls thanks to the power of Game Boy Advance.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was my experience with it.
I had never actually played the sequels to Kirby's Dream Land. I never played Dreamland 2 or 3.
Oh, that was fantastic.
It is available on the 3DS Virtual Console, so I may grab it.
You don't have the Dream Collection.
I do not. That was a horrible oversight on my part.
Oh, that just seemed like something you would have. Kirby's Dream Land 2 was my introduction to the Kirby series.
Ah, okay, so that was your first... Okay, I started with the original Dreamland, but Dreamland 2 was yours, so...
Yeah, this at the time, as I've said before, I didn't have a Game Boy. So when the only way I was able to play this was through the Super Game Boy for the Super Nintendo, which... brilliant invention by Nintendo, kind of merging handheld and console, and boy, we're seeing that again nowadays, aren't we? It showed that Nintendo was already kind of thinking about merging handheld and consoles even way back then, and this was my first experience with Kirby of being able to, run, jump, absorb powers, but this was the first game where Kirby had animal companions, being able to have Rick the hamster, Coo the owl kind of fish, and it helped, augment Kirby's powers, where instead of Kirby throwing the cutter power, and throwing boomerangs, if he was with Rick the hamster, Rick would then throw Kirby as a boomerang.
Oh, nice!
At least I think I may be confusing that with Kirby's Dream Land 3 for the Super Nintendo, but still, it kind of added a little bit of ridiculousness to what Kirby could do, but it all fit in that game world because it was kind of already over the top to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, again, you have. That's one of the very the cool things about Kirby is that he's such a versatile character, and Nintendo typically does that. I mean, same thing with Mario. I mean, he has with the evolution of the Mario franchise, he gains all these different new wacky and weird abilities. Same goes for Kirby.
But one thing that stood out in my mind was how hard this game is. I mean, you thought Dreamland was hard. It's got nothing on Dreamland 2. This, to absolutely get the 100% completion and to fight the real final boss of the game, which was Dark Matter at the time.
Oh,
it was not King DeDeDe. Not King DeDeDe. It was King DeDeDe that was possessed. And that fight, I remember... walking into that, and I grinded up for lives because I had to, because after so many attempts trying to get those damn rainbow drops, I had something like 70 some odd lives. This was, 1995, maybe 1996, so I was 10, 11 years old. And I remember walking into that with about 70 lives. I remember being down to my last one or two by the time I finally vanquished that damn thing. It took me a long time to finally beat the final boss.
Yeah, well, that'll happen.
But, yeah, Kirby's Dream Land 2, along with... and that was when I just started wanting Kirby games. That's when I got Kirby's Dream Course for the Super Nintendo, which, Kirby has a golf ball. Who would have thought?
Because that's a gigantic leap.
But... again, we talk about how versatile Kirby was, and, Kirby being a pinball in Kirby's Pinball Land, 1993. Kirby's Dream Course, Kirby has a golf ball, 1994. Kirby's Block Ball in 1995, because I love Breakout. Love Breakout.
In my doing research for this particular episode, because I haven't played a whole lot of the Kirby games, and I saw Block Ball, and I was like, yeah, I could see that. And then what was it? Then you had Kirby's Avalanche, which is basically Puyo Puyo.
Puyo Puyo. Yeah, it was. I think Kirby's Avalanche and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine was in a couple of months of each other, and we went, oh, jeez.
Oh yeah, right, sure.
It It's only the same game with just different character overlays.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. Kirby's Avalanche came out in April 1995, and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. Well, actually, that was first. Mean Bean Machine was December '93.
Oh wow, that's early.
Yeah. So.
Interesting. I didn't know that. But regardless, I was no good at Puyo Puyo.
Yeah.
Like, when Puyo Puyo Tetris comes out later this year, I'm pretty much getting it for Tetris and not for Puyo Puyo.
Yeah. Like, nope, I want nothing to do with that.
I've given it a shot. I enjoy it. I love the puzzle concept of it, but I cannot wrap my head around, okay, how is this supposed to work?
It's like, and, again, I go back to the usual phrase, oh, Japan. It's...
Yeah.
Kirby's Superstar, wasn't that... I remember that vaguely, that's a Super Nintendo title. Wasn't that like a collection of mini-games?
Yes, it was, I believe, it was 7 main games and then 2, mini-games. So it was basically 9 games. This is what got me hooked on Kirby. Dreamland 2 kind of introduced me. Superstar is what made me go, okay, addicted now. Because they took, basically a enhanced version of Kirby's Dream Land, an enhanced, abridged, that's the word I'm looking for, abridged version of Dreamland. And it threw a lot of interesting other little stuff. It was my introduction to the character Meta Knight, who premiered in Kirby's Adventure.
Yes.
That was another thing that Kirby's Adventure did, was introduced us to Meta Knight. But Superstar was my first exposure to it. They added things like the gourmet race, which finally showed just how versatile the Kirby character was, and the mini games of the reaction time, which was, I think, Samurai something. I can't think of the name, and Megaton Punch, which is kind of more timing based. The various Kirby adventures, the Great Cave Offensive. I always spent a long time in that, because to find all the treasures, Jesus Christ, took me forever as a kid to find every single treasure. Kirby Superstar was the first one to introduce 2-player co-op. You could copy ability and then make a partner, and then someone on the second controller could pick it up, hit a button, and now you have a friend playing alongside you.
Yeah, I mean, this was Kirby's first game on the Super Nintendo, and...
Well, first major game on the Super Nintendo. By that point, Dream Course and, Dream Course was out for it by that point, but, yeah, this was the first major Kirby title. And
I the gourmet race just sounds so funny to me, because it's basically, I look at it and it goes, oh, it's the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, between Kirby and King DeDeDe, and just, it's, again, this is also out on the Wii U Virtual Console as well, so
it was also part of the Dream Collection as well.
Yep. And
and there was also the remake of this Superstar Ultra for the DS a few years later.
Yep.
Well, in 2008, so a dozen years later. And that enhanced even further, throwing King DeDeDe's Revenge, that gave a harder DeDeDe fight. Also introduced us to Masked DeDeDe. Also had a pure helper mode, where you could finally just play as one of Kirby's many helpers, and kind of, them earning their own fame. Kirby's not the only one in the spotlight!
Uh-huh.
I really enjoyed Superstar Ultra, and gave a different final boss, the True Arena, which was basically a boss rush. I don't know if there was too many, games that just had pure boss rushes like Kirby had. I mean, this was nothing new for Kirby, because Kirby's Dream Land had it, but...
Yes, it did.
Superstar just had just one game, the arena, that's all it was. Just fighting all the bosses, one after another. Take whatever powers you want. I was always sword and hammer myself.
It's not a bad combo.
Well, they were the two most powerful abilities, and I liked being overpowered.
Yeah, just it's like how I play RPGs. Just brute force your way through.
But I remember every time that I would make lunch, or my mother would make me lunch, I would sit down and I would go through an arena, and I would have played it so many times by that point. I started making challenges for myself of, single ability runs. Or, whatever power was, when you were about to take the next boss, there was an area, a rest area where you could refill your health or pick up a different ability. I would always change my abilities after every boss fight, and whatever 2 was there, that's what I was stuck with. And, be able to really learn the intricacies of each ability, ninja, wing, suplex. There was even some unique one-shots, like, I don't know if it was in Superstar, but I know there was, Mike Kirby in later games. Yeah, it was in Superstar. Paint Kirby, which was weird. And a few others. Crash, which was basically a giant one-shot explosion. Yeah, just the sheer number of abilities Kirby had in Superstar, really was unmatched until many years later. 2011 was the first time that I really recall that they really started to throw a lot of abilities for Kirby again.
Yep.
So that just gave it a lot of replay value for me.
I'll bet. That just you have all those different abilities. Why not? I mean, and so we had Baby Nick as a completionist even then. So
that's who I was.
And
the OCD was strong.
Yeah,
no, not really.
It was there, and why not? But what did you think? I mean, again, I never played the 2 sequel Dreamland games. What did you think of Dreamland 3, which was now jumping off of the Game Boy and now on Super Nintendo?
I thought this was another really fun title in the franchise. Pretty much followed the exact same plot as Dreamland 2 of, Nightmare kind of taking, trying to take over Dreamland, and wouldn't be the last time we hear from this guy. He just has been a recurring enemy for many years for the Kirby franchise, but it had what fewer abilities you had. It didn't have the massive amount of abilities that Kirby Superstar had, but Kirby had more helpers this time around. He had 6, adding Nago the cat. I can't remember the Chew character, but I really never used her. And Pitch the bird, which was another bird character, but really took abilities and kind of added a what the fuck element to them. Best way I can describe it. Because, if you have, Pitch, and then have, Spark Kirby or Electric Kirby, Spark would then become a remote-controlled electric bird. Kirby would stay in one place, and you could move the control pad and move Pitch around to destroy all the enemies on the screen, and then press the button again, and Pitch would come back to you, and you can move on. Yeah, the game just added so many different abilities and how to get all the Heart Star pieces to form the Heart Star Rod to fight the final boss, because 100% completion.
Well, yes.
all the stages were based really in like either collectathons or puzzles or having the right abilities and characters with you when you get to the end of the stage. It was all very, very interesting. And this is gonna bother the crap out of me. I'm gonna have to look up who that one Chew character was.
It was named. Let's see. I'm looking at the Wikipedia article.
Choo the octopus. Oh, so there we go.
You were half right.
I was half right.
And I'm just looking at the release date for this, November 1997. That is late. This had to have been one of the last games for the Super Nintendo because the N64 was out by this point.
And I think this is why this is a commonly overlooked Kirby title, is because the N64 was out at the time. The Super Nintendo was kind of more of an afterthought at this point. But I did not have an N64, so what few games I could get for the Super Nintendo, I took what I could get, and Kirby's Dream Land 3 was among those. And while it doesn't hold the same place in my heart as maybe some of the other Kirby games in the series, really did appreciate it for a lot of the puzzle elements in the game and kind of thinking outside, kind of a little more outside the box of trying to figure out some of the puzzles. This was also it also had a couple cameos, Metroid most notably, and I had never played Metroid ever in 1997 or whatever I got my hands on this game. I'm pretty sure it was 97. And so seeing the Metroids and going, how the hell am I supposed to deal with these? Not knowing I'm supposed to use ice.
Well, yeah, I mean, that'll happen. It's just like, I kind of miss the days when Nintendo didn't adopt, they didn't have the policy of, as soon as a new console comes out, the previous one is immediately dead.
Yeah.
Because again, this game came out, 14 months after the N64 was released. So I was like, whoa, they were still making games for the Super Nintendo still? That's... Mm-hmm. I miss those days.
I imagine they were still making a Kirby at the time. It's just... maybe they were so close to completion that it just, they took a little more time to finish Kirby's Dream Land 3, and instead of updating the graphics for the N64, they just finished it for the Super Nintendo.
And, then that was that, and I think the N64 only had one Kirby game, I think.
There was supposed to be two, but it ended up being moved to the GameCube.
Okay, because I did play and complete Kirby 64. I did complete the Crystal Shards.
Yes, very fun game. First one to let you use two abilities at once.
Yes, I remember that distinctly because up until this point, when I actually did have an N64, Kirby's Dream Land was the only Kirby game I had ever played up to this point. So I had missed all of the other Game Boy games and the Super Nintendo games, and I got my hand on the Crystal Shards, and that was the first thing I noticed immediately. Like, I had no idea that he gained the ability to copy abilities.
Oh!
So
for you, this was a revelation. Your mind was blown.
Kind of, yeah, because again, up to this point, the only game I had ever played in the Kirby series was Dreamland. So like, whoa, shit! He can copy ability. When the hell did?
Those 8 years, it was like, whoa, wait, what? Wait, fuck?
Like, what the hell? Oh my god! Kirby is God now.
I loved some of the absolute wacky combinations that the Crystal Shards did.
Oh my god.
Some of my favorites. Bomb Fire made Fireworks Kirby. Where Kirby just explodes in fireworks. What was some other fun ones? Cutter Fire made a fire sword. Cutter Electricity made almost like a Darth Maul lightsaber Kirby.
Yeah, because I remember that in this game, you can combine those abilities and just go nuts.
You could cheat through the game and have ice and electric, which made refrigerator Kirby.
Yeah.
Because not only did the food damage enemies, if you missed, you could pick up the food and restore your health.
Yep.
I'm sorry, you wanted to cheat?
I mean, you could completely make a mockery of that game if you were good enough.
And again, it had that collectathon of really forcing you to kind of slow down your playthrough of the game to look and find all the crystal shards so that you could access the final boss, which, for 2000, if seeing 02, it's like, God, that's nightmare fuel. If I was in 2000, I would have been 15. Yeah, that's, even as a 15-year-old, that would have been nightmare fuel. But I didn't play this game. This was one of the few Kirby titles I actually skipped. I didn't play this until... Man, that was probably around the time I was home, so... Yeah, this must have been 06 when I finally got my hands and played through the Crystal Shards.
Another thing that confused the hell out of me when I got through Crystal Shards was, I'm like, wait a minute, King DeDeDe's an ally now? When did that happen?
And the first time that DeDeDe is playable, really the only time DeDeDe was like a true villain was Kirby's Dream Land. And then all the others, he was either a faux final boss or, was kind of more like a rival more than, an actual, bad guy. Even in Kirby's Adventure, it was like, well, yeah, King DeDeDe stole the Star Rod, but only because he wanted to, prevent the Nightmare King from awakening. So it was like, oh, okay, he didn't mean any harm by it.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me of Super Mario RPG, where Bowser joins you in your quest for, to take down Smithy. So it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and it just... And I actually did have a lot of fun playing through this game because, there was obviously a lot more involved than Dreamland, which is, 5 levels and, you're done.
Right. Yeah, this is a lot more involved. Various worlds, stages in each world. The bosses were kind of interesting, I guess would be the correct word. They certainly weren't memorable.
No, I don't remember much about the villains in this game. I just distinctly remember the copying abilities and King DeDeDe is your friend now, and again collecting a lot of the crystal shards, so you could not just plow through like the earlier platformers.
Yeah. The other game that was supposed to come out for the N64, a Kirby title, would have been Kirby's Air Ride 64. This was changed to be the GameCube cut title, Kirby's Air Ride. Now, I don't know if you played it.
I have not.
This was maybe the most fun I've had with a racer. We still go back and have fun with this. We play this like we play Smash Brothers. It's totally simple. All it has is the control stick and the A button. Those are the only 2 buttons you ever use in the game.
All right.
And the rides take off by themselves. You stop with the A button. That's also how you inhale, use powers, make sharp turns. That's how you build power to kind of boost around corners and whatnot. But it had this one mode called City Trial. And you race around in, basically piece of shit stars. And you destroy crates to grab power-ups like top speed, turn, weight, glide, attack, defense, HP. And throughout the area, you'll find other rides. So you could jump off your ride, jump on a new one, and each one had different statistics. Some was better at flying, some had higher top speed, some boosted better, some, you went in one direction until you came to a dead stop, and then you can turn. It was a completely unique game, and City Trial also had various events scattered about, and sometimes like meteors would rain down from the sky, and you had to flee from the meteors or they'll destroy your ride. But if you stayed close enough to them, some might explode into a whole array of power-ups, and then you can go and pick those up. This was the introduction of Hydra and Dragoon, which Dragoon was a popular Smash Brothers item.
Yep.
One shot anyone? And both of them. Dragoon was the major, flying machine, and Hydra was the major ground machine. And if you ran into those, you were toast. Your ride instantly shattered.
Not having played this game, it sounds like a mixture of like Mario Kart, F-Zero, and Crazy Taxi. It's a
well, and at the end of City Trial, like, you have a timer, and once the timer ends, you'll be thrown into either a race, a sprint, a gliding contest, a battle against King DeDeDe, defeat the most enemies. It had a whole bunch of various challenges, kind of like a target game. So you never knew what you were going to go into. So just because you had the best ride and the best stats didn't necessarily mean you were going to win. Some of them were based more on skill. Some of it forced you to cooperate with other people. Sometimes you were competitive. So, and a lot of these elements from Kirby's Air Ride appeared in Smash Run for Super Smash Bros. 3DS many years later.
All right.
So, yeah, Smash Run was basically based off of Kirby's Air Ride City Trial many years ago, back in 2003. And, yeah, this is one of the few games that I'm like, I am begging to Nintendo, please make a sequel. or have this come out for the Switch Virtual Console, something, because this was always just a blast to play. It's so simple, but so much fun.
And it's interesting that you love the hell out of this game, given that it got kind of piss-poor reviews, which is, that's all right.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say this is maybe one of the most, if not the most, underrated title on the GameCube, period. There are not many other games for the GameCube that I think do not get that don't get the love that it should, and Air Ride is definitely, I think, among the top on that list. Of this game was an absolute blast to play despite its simplicity, but I had an absolute killer time with it.
Cool. Alrighty. We'll wind down the first half here, and when we come back, we will continue the Kirby Love Fest. We have there's Wii games to talk about. There's plenty more coming your way. So while we cut out and fly about in Dreamland somewhere, you'll have some music. And we'll be back. You're listening to the 25th anniversary of the Kirby franchise here on Downloadable Content. We'll be back. Welcome back to Downloadable Content, talking about Kirby, 25th anniversary of the franchise. We lived, we got our M tomatoes, and we lived.
So, would I be considered your helper in this one?
I think that's a valid assessment. So you pick one of the nice, soft, furry, cute things that...
No, I'm picking a badass. What are you talking about?
You could be Choo-Choo. No. So, we're moving on here, moving on to some of the more recent titles. One that I wanted to get, and I could still get if I'm willing to pay an arm and a leg for it, because there was that period during the Wii's life cycle that they were really cashing in on the nostalgia with the, Donkey Kong Country Returns, and Kirby got the same treatment, so you had Return to Dreamland.
Oh, a number of years later, 2011.
Oh, yeah. I know there's some more games in the handheld series that we'll get to, but I wanted to start with this.
Yeah, the second Wii game in this for Kirby, and this was a nice return to a Kirby Superstar era of adventure title. We haven't had anything like this from Kirby on the consoles since the Crystal Shards.
Yep.
So this was 11 years later. So this was also the first one that had 4-player co-op. You could either play all as Kirbys, or you could choose Spear Waddle Dee, King DeDeDe, or Meta Knight.
And I saw in the trailers for this game, when I did see that 4-player co-op in it, and I'm like, okay, so they're using the same idea from New Super Mario Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Which...
Actually, that's a very good comparison. Yeah, they pretty much New Super Mario Brothers the hell out of this.
And that was the impression I got, but I still wanted to play it because, it looked like a ton of fun.
And it was. It had an extra mode. It had an extra hard mode with half health. Because fuck you, that's why. And the game was certainly challenging enough, but we got through it. I had myself and a few friends, managed to beat it in 4-player mode, which I kind of wanted to kill them after the fact.
This game and also New Super Mario Brothers are games that make me... I have this, bad memory of grade school, of group projects.
You too, huh?
I hated group projects, and...
Oh, God, they were the worst.
Playing New Super Mario Brothers on the Wii, and this game...
All I can imagine, remember it was you, myself, Ben, and Wyatt that played The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords. And we were ready to kill Wyatt because he was not a team player.
I'll have you know that is still true today.
But that's what I can imagine if the 4 of us played Return to Dreamland or New Mario Bros. Wii, is that same concept of sometimes you can have a great gaming experience, or sometimes you have the one douchebag. So yes, it is exactly the problems you would imagine.
And he no longer has the 2 abilities like he had in Crystal Shards. I think you can only have 1.
Yes, they went to a superstar palette of abilities. There were still quite a few that Kirby could do. I know, like Fighter returned and Sword and Hammer. There were a few others. If I can remember some of the really odd Whip Kirby
the Whip,
was new.
Yes, the Whip was new.
That was new. There was a few other new ones that I can't...
There was a water one and a leaf one.
Yes, water was fun. Leaf, that was okay, but my friend loved Leaf Kirby. Mostly because it was very defensive. There was a super inhale, which, and super abilities. That was the big shtick of that game. That allowed, like, super sword, or ultra sword, or ultra flame, and, there were a few others. Well, but that was the big shtick of, Return to Dreamland.
And because it was a Wii title, you know, you had to, you knew that Nintendo was going to incorporate some of the motion capability of the Wiimote somewhere in that game, and that was with the
absolutely
with the Super Inhale.
Which it wasn't, you know, it was used properly. It is the way I would say it. Is that it, you know, by just shaking it up and down, because you're already just using the Wiimote. You know, not using anything else, so, you know, it held pretty much NES style. So to just kind of move back and forth a little bit, you know, it was, you know, that was one of the ways to use motion controls properly. And not some other games.
We had talked about on the previous episode, talking about vaporware. This game, oh god.
Yeah, Kirby kind of fell off the face of the earth for a while.
He did. I mean, after Crystal Shards...
I mean, there was, you know, like Kirby Squeak Squad for the DS and Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. So, I mean, it wasn't like he had a shortage of titles, but there was a period, 4 years outside of a remake, that Kirby just had nothing.
I'm looking at the developments on this particular game, on Return to Dreamland. You know, this was in development for 11 years. It was first announced at E3 in 2005.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Didn't know that.
Yep, it was shown off at E3 in 2005, and then, you know, it kind of disappeared and reappearing in the ensuing years, and, you know, finally came out in 2011. So.
Well, Sakurai was also busy with, you know, the Smash Brothers series of games and whatnot, so maybe he didn't quite was able to, you know, go back to Kirby at the point. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just percolating here.
Yep. Just speculating and whatnot. But yeah, that was during that period where Nintendo, on the Wii, where Nintendo was just like, okay, nostalgia's king, let's do this. And so...
Well, it was nice to return back to that traditional style of Kirby after what we had last year with Kirby's Epic Yarn.
Oh, which that game is just...
I had to take Mortal Kombat breaks.
You know, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Now I'll jump back to the two handhelds that we glossed over, the Amazing Mirror and Squeak Squad.
Yeah, Squeak Squad was fun. It had an actual, like, touchscreen stomach system where you could combine powers to make new powers, but otherwise it was typical Kirby fare, nothing too different. If I recall, the Amazing Mirror, that was multiplayer, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was basically Kirby Four Swords.
Yes. Yeah. I remember playing it, but this was one of the few I didn't beat. For that very reason, because by the time I got my hands on it, it was the 3DS Virtual Console. I was part of the, we're sorry, there are no games for the 3DS. Here, have some.
Yeah.
Part of that club.
You were part of, yeah, I remember that. It was like, the 3DS, again, same thing with the Wii U, nothing for like the first few years, and then Nintendo's like, I'm sorry, here's everything.
So this is when I first started to play Amazing Mirror, but because there was no multiplayer capabilities with it, with, you know, the virtual console, I had to try and call the AIs to do it, and the AI system for it was not very good. It's like, inhale the block. Oh, Kirby, so where are you going? Come back. I need this block moved. Guys, damn it. So it's either waste more battery power to, you know, call them back over here, or just go, you know what, I'll find another way around this.
So, and, you know, that was, yeah, so did you skip over, so you said you had this on 3DS, because this was a Game Boy Advance game. Did you skip over Game Boy Advance entirely?
Yes. This was another one of those, wasn't allowed to have one.
Okay.
It wasn't until I started to earn my own money, and then when the DS first came out, I think it was out for a year or so by that point, and I said, you know what, fuck it, and pay my own money to get my own game system. The DS was my first system that, you know, I started to, you know, get with my own money.
All right, so since that happened, so did you wind up playing Canvas Curse?
I did not.
Kirby Paint?
I did not play Canvas Curse. This was one of the few Kirby games that didn't really pique my interest.
I can see that. I mean, it wasn't a traditional platforming.
Normally, this is the kind of stuff where, you know, Kirby thrives in this environment. And obviously, this did well enough that it got a sequel years later. But, I don't know, it's just, you know, guiding around using the stylus, Yeah, it was it was the first time for a Kirby game that I kind of felt very meh about it. I think that's just kind of a personal feeling, because clearly the game was a success.
Yes.
So, you know, I would be the exception and not the rule.
And again, Nintendo being experimental, you know, Kirby being, you know, a very versatile character. They put him in all different sorts of settings.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even though I did not play Canvas Curse, you know, Nintendo was still willing to be experimental with him. Epic Yarn. An
idea that was so goddamn adorable.
All right. For those of you who've never played this game out there in the wide world, if you've never played Kirby's Epic Yarn, you know that the point of stupid you feel when, you know, you see a cute puppy or cat or a baby, if you like children, you know, you see one of those and you just lose all comprehension of the English language and just completely devolve into a steaming pile of, so cute. That's basically me throughout the entire playing of this game. From the second it starts to the moment somebody pulls the plug and brings me back to reality. Just, this game is so adorable.
Yeah. This was one of the few that it was such a calming experience. And really enjoyed the hell out of it. You know, it was just pure. It was just fun. There was no pressure. There was no death system, although losing all your gems sucked. If you were trying to go for 100% completion, raising my hand here. You
know, and I thought the opening premise, you know, I remember starting this game, and this is the first time, because when the game opens, it starts off, Kirby's walking through Dreamland, Kirby discovers a tomato, and because Kirby inhales everything, this game, you could think of it as Kirby having an acid trip for the entire game. Because he eats this tomato, and suddenly everything becomes fluffy yarn. I was like, holy shit, man, that tomato. And...
Well, he was sucked in through, the portal to the other world by, the bad guy, Yin Yarn.
Yin Yarn, yes. I would not have been surprised. This game was published by Joanne's Fabrics. Anyway, but this game, I love this game, and even though playing this game, you just feel like you're on laudanum. It's so mellow and so calming, and you just disconnect from everything, while at the same time, wondering where the hell your sense of spoken language has gone to, because you're just this pile of gibbering, uncontrollable, so cute! Now, it's not a pretty sight seeing me do this for hours playing this game.
I have to stop every hour or two to just go play something incredibly violent just to build my testosterone back up.
Just to balance out the real... Yes, I could see that. You play this game for a couple of hours and then you just turn on Mortal Kombat or Resident Evil and just... I need to play a game with blood! Just to...
Yeah.
Balance it all out. But... I remember the characters, Prince Fluff.
Yes, so this game had co-op.
Yep.
Co-op, not recommended. Because again, you will kill someone afterwards.
And this was another game that was very well received, and all because Kirby was reduced to yarn, that opened up a whole different set of abilities.
Yes. And, Kirby didn't have the ability to inhale and copy, but he was able to, use his yarn almost like a whip and roll things up into a ball of yarn and chuck it at enemies, turn into a car or a giant fucking tank, just Kirby things.
Yeah, that hashtag just Kirby things. It's... I think the car levels, though, were some of my favorites.
Yeah, it still offered a varied gameplay without having to use a copyability system. I know when the game was being developed, Kirby was not in the picture, and then eventually they slapped Kirby in there because Kirby went with just about anything, so...
With this game, though, it was kind of nice to see Kirby a little bit off the beaten track, because, again, you took away Kirby's two most recognizable signature abilities, and you still made the game a lot of fun, and just really a nice experience all around.
Yes.
And the fact that you don't have a health bar or extra lives, you have basically infinite lives, is still, that.
I just like the fact that it was developed by Good Feel.
Yes. Nintendo is still, though, they know that they got success with Kirby's Epic Yarn, so they're using that for other characters, like you have Yoshi's Woolly World.
Which I need to finish, and that game is... You thought Kirby's Epic Yarn was adorable? Yoshi's Woolly World takes that to an exponential power to whatever, and that one is just... That one's cuteness overload, and I get it.
I have a feeling that if I ever picked up Yoshi's Woolly World, I would be rendered catatonic.
Probably.
I would just be sitting there just... locked in just this puddle of cute and never leave.
Yeah.
Someone would probably have to throw, like, a carcass of some roadkill at me before they... Oh, all right.
I mean, we can arrange this.
I mean, well, we do live in New York. It's everywhere. So, get used to it. So that was that. Kirby's Epic Yarn was a lot of fun.
Yes.
There was, I think there was another one of the Curse games for the Wii U, was Rainbow Curse, which sounds like poisonous Skittles, but
okay.
That one might have been a bit of a stretch, but whatever, I'll go with it. Since I don't own a Wii U, did you pick this game up?
Nope.
No.
This again, the same thing with Canvas Curse was just kind of, I've seen some gameplay footage of it and was just one of those, no, it really, it just never seemed like it was going to be my cup of tea.
All right.
Which was, I heard it was still good for people who liked Canvas Curse. Rainbow Curse was just more of the same, except I don't think Kirby had powers in Rainbow Curse. I think it was just had some co-op with Waddle Dees.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't own a Wii U, so I don't... I saw this announced, and I looked at it, and I went, Peace, love, and harmony.
It was primarily done with the Wii U gamepad. I'm sure it would have been, if it's your kind of game, it's a lot of, I'm sure it would be a lot of fun. Did it sell well? Not really.
Yeah, it was kind of mixed to positive, all around. And then we have two more games in the Kirby main series. We have Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot.
Now, did you play either one of these two?
I did not. I know Triple Deluxe is a 3DS game, both as is Robobot. So no, I have not picked up either of these.
Alright, so Triple Deluxe kind of followed in the same veins as Kirby's Return to Dreamland, of using the same ability pools as Kirby Superstar, having a collectathon, 120, 100, whatever, things, MacGuffins to collect.
That's really a good word to describe it.
It really is. And this kind of used the 3D feature of kind of jumping background to foreground and back to the background. Triple Deluxe had Hypernova Kirby, which was kind of the replacement for the super abilities. And basically Kirby turned, from a Hoover vacuum to a Hoover black hole. Was able to move giant ass objects or just inhale an entire, he was actually able to inhale Wispy Woods in one go.
Well, when you're hungry.
When you're hungry and there is no substitute, eat an entire goddamn tree.
Yeah, basically. They didn't have Snickers in Dreamland, so,
Kirby would eat the entire Snickers factory. What are you talking about?
He would. He absolutely would.
There were a few new abilities for that series, and I'm trying to remember what they threw in there that was new. They had Circus Kirby, which was weird. Beetle, which was kind of like a attacking sword suplex hybrid, which was kind of neat. Bell Kirby was awesome. That was actually my favorite of the bunch. There was also Archer Kirby, which...
Phrasing. Oh, wrong Archer. All right.
Yeah, wrong Archer.
All right.
No, I was about to make a joke for that too, but you beat me to it. Yeah, the Triple Deluxe was a lot of the same from Return to Dreamland, but it was just in handheld form. And if you liked the standard Kirby style gameplay, Triple Deluxe is definitely up your alley. And I don't know if you go around a GameStop or Toys R Us or whatnot, but if you find one, and it's definitely worth the price of admission. Same thing with Planet Robobot. Which Planet Robobot, again, followed most of the same formulas. Poison Kirby was awesome. First time that Kirby really had kind of a darker power-up. Dr. Kirby, because, we must make all of our characters doctors. We have Dr. Mario, Dr. Luigi, now Dr. Kirby.
Well, and I'm sure none of them are actually licensed.
At least Kirby has a clipboard he can beat enemies over the head with.
Oh, well, that's nice. I mean, have a prop.
He also has a syringe, which makes a rainbow fountain that attacks above and kills everything above it. Don't ask.
Not going to.
Rainbow suppository.
Ow. No, thank you.
There were, again, but the big selling point for Planet Robobot was Kirby now gets to pilot a giant mech, which, of course,
yeah.
there must be giant robots. And naturally, Kirby knows instantly how to pilot the damn thing. The second he jumps into the cockpit, absolutely.
Well, of course, because everyone knows everything about mecha ever.
Yeah. Just jump right in. It's like second nature to me.
Yeah.
Bonus points if you understand that reference.
Yeah, it's like, it's just like, this is nice. Alright.
But it did offer a different array of puzzles, because the Planet Robobot, the mech, let you destroy objects you wouldn't normally be able to destroy with Kirby alone. He was able to destroy giant logs, cars being driven by Waddle Dees, because, fuck the Waddle Dees. Destroy giant turtles with giant mic amp powers. Best way I can describe it. Yeah, you could turn Mike, from a one-shot to a repeated use in the mech. And basically just subwoofer your enemies to death.
I loved that ability in Kirby's Dream Land. I was just it didn't come up very often where you just clear the screen.
Yep, so this one was, it now in a mech, it basically just, the bane of old men everywhere.
Yeah.
Turn that shit down!
Yeah, basically. I get the sense, though, that, with the more recent Kirby titles, that, and this seems to be a pretty frequent criticism of the Nintendo first-party titles in general, that the difficulty is basically non-existent.
Why is there a life system in these games? That was the same problem with Mario, of just, it's such an arbitrary number, because the game is not really that difficult to begin with. If you want to have a life bar and then you die and you have to be whisked back to, the last checkpoint, okay, sure. But to have a life system, you're never gonna run out of lives. And the game shits lives on you to begin with. The only time the life system really kind of mattered was Return to Dreamland, because you might have some incompetent friends.
Well, yeah, I mean,
and you shared lives.
Yeah.
So
there it makes sense, but I mean, that's sort of the criticism. That's kind of why I haven't really played a whole lot of the more recent Nintendo first-party titles, like the more recent Mario games, because, I mean, I am used to the idea of a Mario game being Nintendo hard. So when you have a game in which, after you die a couple of times, there's an on-screen prompt asking do you want to have this game hold your hand for you while you go through the... No, fuck off!
Yeah. Kirby was sort of the same way. He started you off with 7 lives, and the rate you earn stars in the game to get extra lives, it really, the live system really wasn't necessary. The only time the game really started to get difficult was things like True Arena, where you only had 1 life and enjoy that boss rush.
Yeah, have fun!
And, when you get to things like the True Arena for both Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot, it was the noticeable, okay, this is what I remember about, games being, as you say, Nintendo hard.
Well, that's good, because, I do like a little bit of a challenge in my games.
As do I. I understand that these games are more propped towards
kids.
Younger kid, yeah. But, the average gamer is, our age, so... if we're talking statistically speaking, so... we still play these games too, and we want a challenge.
Yeah. Either way, though, there's still reasons why Kirby is still relevant after 25 years. You're still playing them. I'm still playing them.
Kirby is a prominent, front and center character in the Smash Brothers universe.
Absolutely, and, oh yes, Wyatt wanted me to mention that, Kirby is one of the best troll characters in Super Smash Brothers.
Oh, yeah, because you can hail the person to just jump off the edge. Yeah, dick. Mm-hmm. That, of course, Wyatt would be the one to want to make a specific mention of that.
Kirby is my best character anyway in all versions of Super Smash Brothers. So,
really, I thought it was G-Dwarf.
I'm good with him too, but Kirby is, Kirby can fly.
Fair.
Ganondorf can't.
And neither can Ouija.
Yeah, no. So, but, Kirby is, still very popular, still a major face of the Nintendo series of franchises, and I'm curious to see how Nintendo is going to utilize Kirby with the Switch.
It's getting to the point now, we've now had a few, Kirby games now in the last, 7 years, 6 or 7 years, where, we kind of had to return back to the traditional style of Kirby. I'm kind of now ready to see something a little more offbeat. We had Rainbow Curse, but I want to see something more like Kirby's Dream Course, or Kirby's Block Ball, kind of, more of a different style of game, but just Kirby's in it, and not really so much an adventure so much as it's just, a series of puzzles or level layouts of, whatever game you want to insert here. Like Kirby's Block Ball, or Kirby, Tilt and Tumble? That was kind of like Block Ball, but you had gyro controls. I'm surprised that never made it to the Wii U shop.
Yeah, that was a Game Boy Color game, so...
It had the gyro pack built in. I think you had to put in a AA battery, if I recall. I didn't play it, but... it was kind of like Pokemon Pinball in that aspect, where you were able to kind of, move it around, and Pokemon Pinball, you could just change, just tilt everything around. It's like, if you did this to a real pinball machine in an arcade, you'd be thrown out.
Absolutely.
But Tilt and Tumble had that same thing of flicking to make Kirby jump on screen, and, move it around left, right, up, down. I heard it was quite fun if, you had the money and the time to do it.
And, why not? I played Pokemon Pinball. I also loved Sonic Spinball, so... What I would like to see, we're talking about having Kirby, go off the beaten path a little.
Yes.
Give him an RPG.
I'll be down with that.
Give him an RPG.
They kind of did that already in Planet Robobot. There's a side game called oh, that's gonna bother me. Hang on one second.
Team Kirby Clash.
Team Kirby Clash. Yep, that's it. And it was kind of almost like a boss rush, but once you defeated them, you gained experience based upon your score, and you leveled up, and it got better stats. And I really did enjoy that little aspect. And it's like, if you took that and made a full game based off of it, that would be immensely fun.
And I say that because, you and I have both played most of, if not all, of the Mario titles over the last 30 years, and one of my all-time favorite Mario games is Super Mario RPG.
Right.
And if they could do something like that with Kirby, you've got a pretty substantial universe already to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So...
I mean, let's be honest, Brian. You and I are such RPG fanatics. We could take this about any Nintendo franchise that they have and say, make an RPG out of it.
And you're right. You're absolutely right.
But, yes, a Kirby RPG would definitely be something different, something off the beaten path. A Kirby sports title would be something I personally would appreciate. Because, Kirby's already a ball anyway, so there are a lot of ball-related sports you could do.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm definitely down for something a little different now for Kirby, and maybe we'll get something with the Switch. But I see more Nintendo sticking to what they've been doing recently and just making a lot of mainstream stuff.
Well, we'll see what comes of it. I mean, this is one of those Nintendo franchises that they don't usually like to be quiet for long periods of time. Metroid and...
yeah.
Or, Star Fox, or...
Well, okay, to be fair, there was a new Star Fox. It wasn't very good, but there was a new Star Fox.
Kirby's not one of those franchises that Nintendo likes to let sit dormant, so I have a feeling that we'll be seeing it once the Switch is out and we start getting into the Switch's life cycle. We'll start seeing some stuff Kirby related because,
I think by next year, because we just had, 2016 was the last Kirby title that was out. And it seems like it's a couple of years before we hear anything from Kirby again. So maybe not this year, but I think definitely next year, I think we'll start hearing, seeing HAL Laboratories' next Kirby project. And they'll certainly have my interest. They'll have my attention. The second they, show that pink puffball, will be like, okay, what do you got?
What do you got? Exactly. So... I think that about covers it for us. So if you guys have any other comments, questions, thoughts, memories of your experiences playing any of the games in the Kirby franchise, drop us a line. You can do that on our website, dlcpodcast.com. Use the feedback button. Send us your thoughts. Let us know if you want to be in on any future episodes. Give us ideas for episodes. And of course, every single episode is also on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, and Google Play Music. So that is going to do it for us. So happy 25th anniversary, Kirby. Well done. You've made it this far. And all it remains for me to do is to thank Nick, and Nick for being on this episode.
You're welcome, man. You're welcome.
I'm Brian. Have a good one, everybody.